Good day, sir. Good day, classmate. I'm the cadet Flores Raymart. So I am here today. I'm going to uh, report or tackle about what is global governance with the integration of COVID-19 pandemic. So contemporary global governance border activities that rise above national boundaries at the international transnational and regional levels, and is based on rights and rules that enforced through a combination of economic and moral incentives occurring in the present. So this means that global governance is the sum of laws, norms, policies, and institutions that define, constitute, and mediate relation between citizens, societies, and states in the international system, with which the wielders the objects of the exercises of international public power. It is aimed at negotiating response to problems that affect more than one state or region. So we all know that the coronavirus has infections of million, killed of thousand, and affected the well-being of billions more. The COVID-19 pandemic is multinational threat that requires immediate global response, but the outbreak has has laid bare divergent national approaches to managing global uh, epidemiological interdependence, and exposed broader structural and weaknesses in global governance system. So next is how to provide the pandemics. First is the financial. So the World Bank Group is taking broad fast action to help developing countries strengthen their pandemic response, increase disease surveillance, improve the public health interventions, and help the private sector to continue to operate and sustain jobs. It is deploying up to $116 billion in financial support over the 15 months to help countries protect the poor and vulnerable, support business, and bolster economic recovery. So especially to those countries that do not have do not have pandemic preparedness, BREC, some countries started to propose pandemics response that's started in pandemic.
So good day everyone, my name is Decadet Bernardo Mateo, and here are some key points and research findings related to global governance and the COVID-19 pandemic. So first is the international organizations and coordination. So global governance often involves international organizations like the United Nations, World Health Organizations, and others. So these organizations play a crucial role in coordinating response to global challenges. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the World Health Organization, or WHO, provided guidance, shared information, and facilitated international cooperation in research and vaccine distribution. So the second one is the national versus global interest. Global governance requires two countries to balance their national interest with a global interest, and in the context of COVID-19, countries had to make decisions about vaccine distribution, export bans, and travel restriction while considering their global responsibilities to combat the pandemic collectively. And the third one is the vaccine equity. So one of the most pressing issues in global governance during the COVID-19 pandemic is vaccine equity. Research has shown that vaccine distribution has been highly uneven, with the high-income countries acquiring and administering vaccines at much higher rate than low-income countries. This has raised concern about global justice and the need for fair vaccine distribution. And the fourth one is the economic impacts. So the the pandemic economic impacts highlighted the importance of the global economic governance. So the government and international institution had to coordinate fiscal and monetary policies to mitigate the economic fallout. Research indicates that countries with strong global economic ties fare better in managing economic shocks. So the fifth one is the travel and trade. COVID-19 also affected global travel and trade. Governments imposed travel restriction and disruption in supply chains. Research suggests that a coordinated global approach to travel restriction and trade policies would have been more effective in containing the virus spread while minimizing economic disruptions.
So hello everyone, I am Dec Cadet Bachansila. So for today's report, I am going to tackle about the effects of globalization and government. So first, what is globalization? So globalization is a term used to describe how trade and technology have made the world into a more connected and interdependent place. Globalization also captures in its scope the economic and social changes that have come about as a result. So, in other hand, it have a positive impact or effect about the globalization in our government. So, because the government may use the money and interest from globalization to fund more vital initiatives that make people lives easier as for considering about the technology advancement and economic advancement. So, for the negative effects of globalization in government, so in other hand, globalization in our environment has a negative impact, and this lead to increase of corruption.
Identify the institutions that govern international relations. So, international relations are governed by a complex wave of institutions and organizations. Some of the ones include number one, United Nations or UN. The UN is a central organization for international cooperation addressing global issues such as peace and security, human rights, and development. World Trade Organization or WTO. The WTO regulates international trade and resolves trade disputes among member countries. 3. International Monetary Fund or IMF and World Bank. This institution provide a financial assistance and promote economic stability and development worldwide. Number 4, North Atlantic Treaty Organization or NATO. NATO is a military alliance that promotes collective defense among its member countries. Number 5, European Union or EU. The EU is a regional organization that governs economic, political, and security matters among the European countries. Number 6, African Union or AU. The AU focuses on cooperation and integration among African nations addressing issues like peace, security, and development. Number 7, Organization of American States or OAS. The OAS promotes cooperation and dialogue among countries in the Americas. Number 8, Association of Southeast Asian Nation or ASEAN. ASEAN facilities regional cooperation and economic integration in Southeast Asia. Number 9, Shanghai Cooperation Organization or SCO. The SCO promotes cooperation among Asian countries, particular in security and economic matters. Number 10, The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or OIC. The OIC addresses issues affecting Muslim majority countries and promotes solidarity among its members. So these are just a few examples, and there are many other regional and global institutions that play roles. So in international relations, the specific institutions involved often depend on the issue at hand and the countries involved. That's all, sir. Thank you.
Good everyone, I am Decadit Vince Agravante. I am here to discuss the difference between internationalism and globalism. Before anything else, let me present to all of you the definition of each term. So first, what is internationalism? Internationalism is a political principle that advocates greater political or economic cooperation among states and nations. It is associated with other political movements and ideologies, but can also reflect a doctrine, belief system, or movement in itself. Supporters of internationalism are known as internationalists and generally believe that humans should unite across national, political, cultural, racial, or class boundaries to advance their common interests, or that governments should cooperate because their mutual long-term interests are of greater importance than their short-term disputes. And next is, what is globalism? Globalism refers to the various patterns of meaning beyond the merely international. It is used by political scientists such as Joseph Nye to describe attempts to understand all interconnection of the modern world, and to the highlights pattern that underlie and explain them. While primarily associated with world system, it can be used to describe other global trends. The concept of globalism is also classically used to distinguish the ideologies of globalization. The subjective meanings from the process of globalization, the objective practices. In this sense, globalization is to globalization. What is nationalism is to nationality. And based on my understanding, the difference between internationalism and from globalism is the internationalism is the political, economic, and cultural cooperation between states, while globalism is an ideology founded on the notion that people, goods, and information should be able to transcend national borders freely. Although the two terms may appear to be similar, yet there exists conceptual difference between the two. Globalism is much wider term in terms of its meaning, scope, and outcome, while internationalism lays stress only on the solidarity and cooperation among the nations. While acknowledging their sovereign character, globalism on the other hand, not only emphasizes the delusion of the sovereign expression of the nations, but demonstrates the conflicts arising out of this delusion as well. This, however, does not mean that globalism is a negative concept, because surrender of national sovereignty to some extent is aimed to moderate the barriers to international exchanges. For example, in international organizations like WTO, the mode of exchange we witness as a blend of both internationalism and globalism. However, globalism tends to dominate the scenario, while the countries seek cooperation for international trade and respect each other. Independence in decision making, yet it is often the southern nations that have to compromise their national interests. Subsequently, a conflict arises between the interests of various nations in the name of global cooperation. Practices like neo-colonialism are undertaken.
Hello sir, I'm Cadet Mejias. So my topic is to identify the rules and functions of the United Nations. So I have here the main rule and functions of the United Nations. So number one is to maintain international peace and security. Yes, we need or it is needed to maintain the international peace in every nation, and also to secure our human and each nation. So next is to protect human rights. Yes, we need or it needed to protect the human rights because as a human, I have my own rights to do something, to have a plan, something like that. So it is needed to protect our human rights. Next is to deliver humanitarian aid, and lastly, to support sustainable development and climate action. Yes, it the rules and functions of the United Nations is to support sustainable development. So, like for example, other nation is needed something like this, and then it help other nation supporting each other like that. And also for a climate action, for example, this nation have a climate, and then the other nations is they need to help that nation who is a climate like that. So I have three reasons and rules of the function of United Nations. So the first one is to maintain international peace and security, and to that end, to take effective collective measure for the prevention and removal of threats to the peace, and for the suppression of acts of aggression or other breaches of the peace, and to bring about by peaceful means and in conformity with the principles of justice and international law, adjustment or settlement of international disputes or situation which might lead to a breach of the peace. So next one is to develop friendly relation among nations based on respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, to take other appropriate measures to strengthen universal peace. And lastly, but not the least, is to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems of an economic, social, cultural, or humanitarian character, and in promoting and encouraging respect for human rights and for fundamental freedoms for all without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion, and to be a center of harmonizing the actions of nations and the attainment of these common ends. That's all what about my topic is. Thank you.
Good day! I'm here to explain the relevance of the states amid globalization. The relevance of states amid globalization has been a topic of debate among scholars and policymakers, while globalization has led to increased interconnectedness and the blurring of national boundaries. Conditions play an essential role in shaping the global economy and international relations. On the other hand, globalization has led to the rise of transnational corporations and global networks that operate across borders, making it more difficult for individual states to exert control over economic activity. Additionally, the growth of international organizations and agreements, such as the World Trade Organization and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, has created a global governance system that operates beyond the control of individual states. On the other hand, states continue to have significant power to shape the global system. States control borders, regulate trade and investment, and set policies that can have substantial impacts on the worldwide economy. Additionally, conditions can influence international norms and values and shape the global agenda through diplomacy and cooperation. In short, while globalization has led to increased interconnectedness and blurring national boundaries, states remain relevant actors in shaping the global economy and international relations. The balance of power between states and global forces will continue to evolve and shift. But the role of states in shaping the global system is likely to remain significant for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Globalism. Globalism is a broader and more comprehensive perspective that envisions a more interconnected, and interdependent world where national boundaries are less significant. It advocates for the idea that the world should function as a single global community. Globalism often promotes the idea of a global governance structure of global institutions that would have authority and influence beyond individual nation states. This could include concepts like world government, global citizenship, or supranational organizations with significant powers. It tends to prioritize global interest over national sovereignty, which can be a source of controversy and resistance for some quarters. Globalism encompasses a wide range of issues, including not only diplomacy and trade, but also global changes like climate change, human rights, and economic inequality. In summary, the main difference between internationalism and globalism lies in their scope and approach. Internationalism emphasizes cooperation among sovereign nations while respecting their autonomy, while globalism envisions a more integrated and interconnected world with a potential shift of authority from individual nations to global institutions. Both concepts have their proponents and critics, and their interpretation can vary depending the context and the specific issues at hand. Thank you.